In June of 1987, in the city of Tacoma, Washington, a city known for its subtle and short summers and very cold winters, and known for its famous Museum of Glass, beautiful green landscapes, and various art attractions. And on this day, a concert is being held at the very popular Tacoma Dome, with various bands performing that night. These include Hell's Kitchen, Soylent Green, and Silent Treatment. This was still around the heydays of the heavy hostilic punk rock scene where fans would wear shaved heads and mohawks and heavy military combat boots, which was very predominant in the 1970s and late 1980s. Newcomers Nirvana, founded by lead singer Kurt Cobain, who had formed the group the same year in 1987 in Aberdeen, Washington, where the band was formed, brought a new style to the table, an evolution of a new style of rock music known as grunge rock slash alternative rock, often labeled as a figurehead band of Generation X. Generation X considered to be the demographic of people following the baby boomers and preceding to the millennials. And Nirvana was also newly signed to a new record label known as Sub Pop. So the people in the crowd who were mainly going to the concert to support the other bands just didn't like Nirvana. They didn't appreciate their music because it was new and different, and they ridiculed the members of the group, criticizing them for their long hair and labeling them dirtheads. And the fans in Tacoma just didn't like this new group. And on this particular day, a 14-year-old girl by the name of Heather, who attended Curtis High School in Tacoma, Washington, was really looking forward to go to this concert. She gets out of school early on this day, she goes home, she showers, gets ready, and invites some of her friends to go with her later that night to the rock concert. And mostly all of Heather's friends are guy friends. Heather is a punk rock type of girl, and she'd rather hang out with the boys than with other girls her age. She's basically one of the guys of the group and just rather be different than the other girls from her school. So at around 8 p.m., Heather's friends, some of which are a few years older than her, pick her up and arrive at the concert. Heather rolls in 20 deep with her friends, and also, ironic enough, Heather's boyfriend named Paul, age 16, is working that night at the concert's concession stand. Paul doesn't make much money there. He's basically getting paid cash under the table by the theater manager. And he notices Heather when she arrives and waves at her from a distance. Meanwhile, Paul overhears a manager of the building talking over the phone with the band members of Nirvana and tells them to not be late to the show and to not skip the show in case they weren't able to make it, because it was very important of them to arrive cordially and to not miss the show. Also because many of the fans in the arena just didn't like the band and they weren't accepting of their type of music. And to make matters worse, if they showed up late, the fans had yelled out in the arena that they were going to cause havoc upon them and beat them up. And so Paul just continues to work his shift and ignore it all and ignores the call between the manager and Nirvana. The show finally begins at around 9 p.m. And Nirvana isn't late, and they show up and set up shop in one of the back end rooms where they can prepare and get ready for their performance. The show is lit up and the music starts to play and the other bands are starting to perform, and at around 11 p.m. Nirvana is out next. And they walk out the room where they were in and onto the stage into the arena, and the groups of fans of the punk rock scene begin yelling at them and at Kurt Cobain and Nirvana, and just tries to block all the hostility and focus on the task at hand. A few songs into the performance, the crowd goes wild, and they start throwing glass beer bottles at the stage, and one of the bottles hits Kurt Cobain on the head, and all hell breaks loose. Some of the guys jump onto the stage and start beating, punching, and kicking Kurt Cobain and the rest of the group of Nirvana. And so Nirvana has no other choice but to lash out as well at these enraged fans. And meanwhile, during all of this hostility and back and forth, free for all, Heather panics and decides to leave, and so she runs towards the exit. And Paul sees her and runs behind her. And as soon as he approaches Heather, he yells at her. He tells her, "You're not leaving alone. I'll walk you home. It's not safe for you to walk out alone this late by yourself." And this was already around 12 a.m. midnight. Heather refuses and tells Paul simply, "No, it's okay. You're working, and I don't want you to miss your job." Paul, Paul tells her, "It's okay. Don't worry about it. You just can't walk home alone. Please." And Heather's friends during this time were in the crowd of hostility that was taking place, so they didn't see Heather walk out. Paul really cared about his girlfriend and just couldn't take no for an answer, but so Heather insists that she would be fine and that she would visit Paul in the morning. And this is in 1987, when cell phones still weren't around, and so there wasn't any form of Paul finding out if Heather had made it home safe. And home phones were barely being introduced to the United States. You know, around this time, it was irrelevant to have a cell phone, and not everybody had the luxury of having these home phones yet. So Heather leaves, and Paul just shakes his head and goes back to his job duties. But Paul is enraged, he's upset, and he just can't believe that, Heather wouldn't let his boyfriend walk her home. Heather is terrified, and in reality, she's just actually really scared. It's dark outside and it's late, and there's no one around at this time, maybe a few cars here and there. And Heather keeps walking, and she starts to panic more and more as she continues to walk home. And out of nowhere, a stranger sees her walking down the dark alleys of Tacoma and pulls over right next to her and asks her if she needs a ride. Heather accepts because at this point she doesn't want to be walking home alone, especially at night and this late, and after all the hostility and craziness that occurred at the concert. She's just terrified. As soon as Heather gets in the car, the man pulls out a knife and threatens Heather. He speeds up towards a hill of patchy grass and bushes where he parks his mobile home. He pulls Heather out of his truck and rushes her inside his mobile home, where he ties her hands to a pulley attached to the ceiling. Several days pass, and on the course of these days, the man rapes her and cuts Heather's stomach open and slices her neck with a knife. And he tortures Heather with a blowtorch as well. Heather at this point is hungry, in pain, malnourished, and she's just in a lot of anguish from the brutality of this man. And one day the stranger decides to go out to the nearby gas station to get gas for his truck. And he's thinking this girl is almost dead, and there's not much life left in her. Somehow, in her disparity, out of desperation, Heather manages to free herself and jumps out through one of the windows and jumps out onto the man's truck and makes a run for it. When the man returns to his truck, Heather is already gone, and he realizes she had managed to escape. And ironically, the next day, the police pull him over for a traffic violation. And the man is identified as Gerald Friend. The police soon find out Friend's violent history after finding out that Heather had been the second victim of his brutal attacks. 27 years prior, in July of 1960, in the town of Summer, a small town not so far away from Tacoma, Washington. It had been there where Gerald Friend had kidnapped his first victim while she was going on a hike with her brother. Gerald sexually assaulted her and beat her almost to death. This girl also managed to escape after jumping outside into a nearby river. Friend tried to hide, but his father discovered him, and after a fight broke out between them, Gerald's friend was seriously injured and rushed to the hospital, where eventually he was arrested after being spotted as the man that had done these gruesome attacks. He was sentenced to serve 75 years in prison for his first attack, but was paroled early in 1980. And so that explains his attack against Heather, because he was free in 1980 and the attack on Heather was in 1987. And 7 years later, Heather became the second victim of Gerald. After Gerald's second crime, he was sentenced to 75 years plus 75 years on top of the ones he was supposed to serve. And Heather, over time, decided to press charges and sue the state for allowing Gerald to be released out of parole early. Later that same year, a newspaper came to the light about the incident and Gerald's friend's rampage on his attack, and Nirvana singer Kurt Cobain stumbled across the article and was intrigued by the story, and decided to write a song based on this news article, and wrote the song Polly, a song that became very popular across the charts and became one of the #1 hit songs of Nirvana, and still to this day has a very large cult following. And till this day, Heather has to live with her scars for the rest of her life. That's it for this story, folks, and I hope you've enjoyed it. Bye.